Hi and welcome back to the course. In this video we're looking at something really cool, which is request parsing. Remember in the last video we looked at the put request and we determined that if we were creating a new item, we were going to use the price in the request's JSON payload. However, if we were updating the item, we were going to use the entire payload. That means that, for example, if the payload were to include a name, the item's name would change alongside this update. And that may not be what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that only some elements can be passed in through the JSON payload. Flask-RESTful has a really nice way of doing this, which is using recparse. Now, recparse is not part of Flask-RESTful, or at least the way of doing this is not part of Flask-RESTful. It was built a lot earlier, and it was present for command line applications before it was present for REST APIs. But it works essentially the same way. So once you know how to use recparse, which you'll learn in this video, you'll be able to use it in a wide range of other areas as well. Okay, so now that we've imported recparse from Flask-RESTful, all we have to do is go down to the put endpoint here, and what we're going to do is say that parser is recparse request parser. This only initializes a new object which we can use to parse the request. Essentially, we're going to run the request through it and see what arguments match those that we define in the parser. But of course, we first have to define arguments. So we're going to say parser add argument, and the argument is going to be price. And then we can also give it a bunch of other information, such as the type, which is going to be a float. Remember, we had a problem at the beginning that if we passed 12.00, the price ended up being an integer instead of a float. This should get rid of that. We can say required equals true to make sure that no request can come through with no price. And finally, we can also say help equals this field cannot be left blank. You can put any other message here. There's also a lot of other different things that you can pass the add argument, and we will discover them as we go along. Now, the parsing, when we actually run this with the request, is going to look in the JSON payload, but it would also look in, for example, form payloads, which we haven't looked at and we won't look at in this course. But if you have a HTML form that sends you some data, you can use this request parser to go through the form fields as well. Just as a bit of trivia there. And finally, instead of request.getJSON, we're going to say parser.parse args. And that's going to parse the arguments that come through the JSON payload, and is going to put the valid ones in data. Now we've only defined price, so if we put any other arguments in the JSON payload, they will just get erased and we will never see them. Okay? So that's it really. I'm going to put a new line in there to make things a bit nicer. And now what we've done is we have essentially parsed our request, or we will do when we run it, and made sure that the price element, the price argument is there. So let's go over to Postman, and I'm going to close these things here, make sure the app is running, which it is, and then let's create a new item, which is going to be a piano. And I'm going to send it. Notice the body does have the price, so everything is fine. Now I'm going to change the body to be price instead of price, which sounds pretty much the same. I didn't want to say prick in video, which I just did. And notice how price says this field cannot be left blank. And just so you believe me, I'm going to change the price. And then we're going to go into the get items and make sure that it's still $17.99. So the request terminated when it realized that the field was not there. And that's what you would expect. Also, to make sure that you do believe me, I'm going to print data another, which is a field inside data that we have not added an argument for. So notice we've only got an argument for price. We don't have an argument for another. And then we're going to go into postman and go into the put method again. Make sure the price is correct. And I'm going to put another in there. And notice how we get a key error. This is the nice HTML page here. We get a key error, another. And what that means is this thing here doesn't exist. Data does not have a key called another. And it shouldn't, because the only argument that we've got is for price. So all the other arguments, such as another, just get erased and we will never see them. Okay? Even though another is here in the JSON payload, we have not accepted it in the API, therefore it just doesn't get passed in. Okay, that's everything for request parsing. Now I would encourage you to also do this in your other endpoints where you want to make sure that the price is passed in and there's nothing else passed in. For example, the post method. And without further ado, I'll see you in the very next video.